Writing is about the process. It's about listening and recognizing remnants of your story in the stories of others. When we share our stories with each other, we share the resonance of the human experience. The By Firelight podcast is your invitation to join our circle, a circle of writers, poets, seekers, and storytellers as we capture our living in words. This multifaceted living with joy, grief, love, growth, and loss is shared among us in your legacy, your story. The things you choose to do with your days as they unfold matter here. I'm your host, Betsy Delzer. I'm many things, but in this gathering, I'm a painter, poet, and writer, and I'm honored to be your guide through these episodes. Together, we'll find our muses in the rich and heart-expanding conversations with incredible guests, many who are like minds and all outrageously inspiring hearts. When you press play, you're here in the circle to share this space with us. By Firelight.
Well, welcome, friends. I am so happy to be here with you. It's just me this time, and this will be a slightly shorter episode than normal. You know, at the time that I'm recording this, we're just drawing 2025 to a close. And I've thought a little bit about a shorter length invitation into some rituals for closing and opening back to a new year. So here are a couple of ideas, all right? You could grab a cup of tea or something warm, maybe some other kind of beverage. You could grab a journal. There's so many of you who have said to me along the way, like, I'm just not sure where to begin. So in the spirit of closing, ending, and beginning again, why don't we try together? If you don't have a journal, it might just be a scrap sheet of paper. I'll never forget Karen Rigsby, one of my first guests on this podcast, shared that she wrote often on napkins. So whatever you have laying around, I invite you to grab it and carve a little space in time. Shall we? All right, so we're going to talk about 3 different ways that I invite writing into the ritual of closing a year. Not all original ideas by any stretch of the imagination. Let's begin with a fire ritual. Okay, this one you really could use even gift wrap or tissue paper that you have laying around. And I want you to keep it super simple. The things that I write when I'm going to burn them are usually with the prompts, I want, I need, or something like I want to say, or I wish I could tell you. There are times when we carry words or thoughts, even some actions around with us. And whether a person is in our lives, but we don't really want to say the thing, or they're no longer in our lives for any number of reasons, it's helpful to sometimes still express. The fire helps us release. With the namesake, By Firelight, it's only fitting I start with the fire ritual. What you would need is some kind of flame. Could be a candle. I've done this with long matchsticks, and I've also done this in fires in places or in the woods, maybe even a fire pit. Okay. So depending on how big or small your fire situation is, you have that ready to go eventually. But take a moment and take this paper, an easily flammable paper. Like, that's why I like tissue. I really do. It is like kindling. It's beautiful. And then just write on it. I want. What do you want? What are you holding on to as a wish or desire? What is there yearning or longing that you have? I need. What is it that you need? I cue this so often when I'm teaching yoga. Just the inquiry itself, but also the practice of knowing what you need. It's not always easy. In fact, it's rarely easy to know what we need. So engage in the practice by writing it down. I need. I want to say, or I wish I could say. What is the conversation that is burning inside you that can be released through that fire? Really, anything works for the fire ritual, but it's a way of letting go. It's a way of releasing. And once you have the words written down, oftentimes I do them on strips of paper or pieces of tissue, and then I sort of roll them up and light them from one end. It's also a beautiful ritual to do with people in person because you can talk through the process, maybe not reading directly the words. There's something really special about capturing the words and then letting them go. And it's between you and the flame and the ashes and the sky, you know. But talking about it as you do it can bring the people who love you, who care about you, close into your process of release. And it's quite simply just that. The second ritual of closing and opening that I love personally is something that I remember my best friend from college, Molly, starting in, I have record of it as far back as 2010. But I remember her prompting this at a New Year's gathering, and it was to select words for the year. Some people choose one, some people choose more than one. I'm somebody who chooses 3. I don't know why. I have tried to choose fewer than 3 and more than 3, but 3 feels like the magic number for me. I will be honest, I start this process somewhere in the middle of the year where I'm engaging the words that I've chosen, kind of checking in with how they feel, and then thinking about them moving forward. Like what feels like a good fit. And I literally start trying on words July, August, September, and then I sort of pause that whole process. And then here we are in the end of the year, the last weeks. And now I'm really actively trying them on because I commit for the whole year and I circle back to them pretty frequently. How do I circle back to them? Well, usually I have a visual somewhere nearby, but I also integrate them into my yoga practice. So hitting the mat several times a week when there's sort of a prompting or a moment in the beginning of my practice where I'm setting an intention, a sankalpa for the practice itself, I will think of one of the words usually and try to weave that into my practice as my intention for my physical asana practice. Now you might be like, oh, I don't know. I don't have anything to do with yoga and I can't relate. That's fine. I think often of Kelly McGonigal and her definition of mindfulness that I've used so many times, but it's really that intention is the first element. The intention, who do you want to be? How do you want to show up? And allowing that to guide your selection of words. So this is something where you might just grab that piece of paper. It could still be the gift wrap or the tissue. It could be your journal or a napkin, and just start jotting words. Here are some of my words in the past that I can remember just off the top. Slow, ink, serendipity, synchronicity, love, clarity, align, arise, awaken. That was one year I used all that elation. This year was listen, ritual, and synchronicity. Oh, there's so many more because I choose 3 a year, right? So I often have a lot of words to choose from or remember. And that's why the journaling helps, because it's helpful to kind of circle back and remind myself. The year that I chose slow, I was really deliberate about slow food in particular. I remember my children were younger, much younger. So in 2010, when I started this practice, my son would have been 2 and my daughter was 5, and they're now adults. So when I chose slow, I committed to not using a microwave. I committed to not using plastic for food. And so I was cooking things on the stovetop in the teacher's lounge. It was great. I also found myself really aware and cognizant of the rush that we put ourselves in, right? Because rushing is usually something we elect to do, whether or not we will admit that. So slowing down, I would often use that word to slow myself down. Are you really in a rush? Does this really require this amount of energy? With the word listen this past year, most recently, I used it more of a check and balance. Am I listening? Really listening? Am I waiting to say the next thing, or am I really engaging with what the person is saying in front of me? And then, because loved ones give us feedback, it's a really nice way of putting it, isn't it? I really tried to listen. What are they saying? What are they trying to tell me? And I would really try to listen. And the word itself would kind of bounce back. It's like a boomerang, like, hey, babe, are you listening? That's what I would tell myself. And the last one I'll talk about is ritual. This word has been a pretty big word for me. I actually had it 2 years in a row. I had it for 2024 and 2025. Oh, wait, I have another good story. Okay, hold on. Finish ritual. So ritual was important to me. It was beautiful and meaningful enough in 2024 that I carried it into 2025. I don't usually do that. And I'm still trying to decide if I'm ready to let it go for 2026. I don't think so. I'm hosting this retreat at Holy Wisdom Monastery just outside Madison, Wisconsin in January. And it's called Ritual Beginning. And I'm actually really kind of considering a year of ritual retreats. So you're helping me make the decision on the spot. Thank you very much. But ritual for me in the past year was really integral in my yoga practice. Why am I on the mat? Why am I doing this again? And I would just breathe in and out. Ritual, ritual, ritual. The story that popped to mind, though, was in 2019 on the cusp of 2020. Okay. So remember where we all were at that time. A phrase came to my mind, and it was like a conjuring of something. It was, I don't know how to describe it honestly, but I was really considering, do I use a phrase for my words for the year, which I'd never done before. I've never done a phrase. I've done individual words that can sort of be parsed out and dealt with individually, but also have like great significance in and of themselves. So I wasn't ready to actually commit to a phrase, but over and over at the end of 2019, the words that came to my mind were trust that you are held, trust that you are held. So that was the phrase that I was thinking. I was like, should I just say those are my words for the year? This whole phrase, trust that you are held. And I decided I wasn't ready for a phrase. So I just chose the word held. And it was a reminder to me of that phrase and of that, like, I'm just going to go here because if you're listening to a solo episode, you probably know me fairly well. But it almost felt like there was some sort of spirit sense. I don't know how else to describe it, but it just, that phrase came in. So whether it was my higher self, some other entity or being, some other spiritual realm, I don't know. And I don't really need to know or care to know. But trust that you are held was something that was so strong in that turnover and cusp from 2019 to 2020. So you know what happens next, right? It's like turning the page and knowing what's coming in the story. The pandemic. And that included a massive job change for me, where I picked up a couple of art classes. I hadn't been in the classroom since 2015. I had to go and teach online just 2 sections of art, and also, because you know me, you'll appreciate family consumer science. It was like a blend. There was no curriculum for this. And so because of the way that the schedule was working out in COVID through the spring and into the summer, I ended up teaching this really random kind of hybrid of family consumer science. Mind you, I haven't like sewn a pair of boxer shorts since 1988 when I was an 8th grader. And I was teaching online, right? And then I was also doing my mindfulness, restorative practices, social emotional learning position in addition to these 2 classes that I had to pick up due to scheduling and the way that my contract changed. And when I tell you the number of times as a single mom in an 800 square foot at the time, I was in this small apartment, 2 teenage kids. Jet was really kind of early in his adolescent journey, and my daughter Coco was in 9th and 10th grade. So we're all doing online school. We're in a tiny living situation. And the absolute bedrock of that experience for me was trust that you are held. Isn't that kind of gorgeous? I mean, it really helped. It really helped. I'm excited for you to hear an upcoming interview that I have with an artist by the name of East Forest. If you haven't checked out his Meditation for Chaotic Times, it's a beautiful piece. And there is a moment where I was listening to it in 2020, walking, because that's about all we could do when we were in the lockdown era of the pandemic. And he says, "You are held." I felt like it kept coming up. It was affirmed in so many different ways, and I needed it. I desperately needed it. So the words that you choose, try them on, write them down, look at them, try different combinations of words, and see if you can commit simply to bringing them to mind. There's really no other outcome other than that, right? Yeah, I gave up a microwave one year. Ink led me to my first real visible tattoos, like on my forearms. But there's no product that has to come from the words. It's really just the way that you align your intentions with how you're showing up in the world. The final piece that I would encourage you to think about is actually going to be a springboard prompt from something I wrote just today. So I wrote something this morning. I woke up with a lot of energy this morning, and there's sort of this beautiful snowfall here where I am in Wisconsin, and coffee, and it was dark for so long. And I just started writing this morning, and these words came. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read them, and then I'm going to go back through and just see what I would pull from the piece as prompting for you. And then that's it. You can write from this piece. You can write your words, a number of different words, see how they sashay and tango, see what sticks for you, and then maybe you can burn something down. All right. So here is the piece I wrote this morning, and then I'll run it back with a few prompts. There's a soft settling in the last month of the year, a quiet knowing. At the beginning of something like a year, we sketch the vision of accomplishing. We outline a version of ourselves we are still striving for. Through the days that stretch to weeks and months, we paint in the lines. Through the ordinary moments and the rarity, the extraordinary too. When all is said and done, in the final hours of 3:35 to 3:65, when calendar pages are filled with check marks and strikes through our task lists, our hearts have carried love, been stretched in learning, and suffered the cracks and fissures that come. They come, almost with a guarantee. I had no idea how many times a heart could break and carry on. My heart breaks hearing the news. It's broken thousands of times just this year, and somewhere in the rubble, I see and I feel there's still hope. My heart breaks amidst the ordinary too. It bends and cracks when I can sense pain. Still, I can taste hope on my lips. And when I close my eyes, I can see it behind my lids, the kaleidoscopic light. When we begin again, maybe we could resolve to meet each other, knowing, sensing, relating, and feeling. Perhaps instead of achievements and goals, we could peel away layers and sit in the essence of each other. This is the rendering and blueprint I want for these and all the days of my living. Okay, so I'm going to run it back with a few things that I'm going to pull out as a starting point for you. Okay, so here we go. And I've not pre-thought this, so bear with me. A soft settling, a quiet knowing. At the beginning, we sketch the vision. Through the days, when all is said and done, our hearts have carried love. How many times a heart could break. I would also see the possibility of using how many times a heart could break and carry on. My heart breaks. I see and I feel. It bends and cracks. Still, when we begin again, we could peel away in the essence of each other all the days of my living. So you could take any one of those individual phrases as a springboard prompt. And so you would write down, let's just use the last one I said, all the days of my living. Write it down on your piece of paper, in your journal, on your tissue paper, and just begin to write. Set a timer or no timer. Do this in the morning when you're fresh into the day or at the end of the day. You could do it as a prayer with some kind of spiritual aspect of it. A well wish, right? All the days of my living, the next words that might come down, I want, right? All the days of my living, I hope for. All the days of my living, I will, right? And just allow the words to come. Keep it simple, embrace the unknown, and see where it leads you. Where it leads you. That would be a good one too. Thank you for allowing something that popped up on your notifications perhaps, or a search, maybe a link that someone sent you. Thank you for following the inkling and the urge to come listen, to practice closing and opening with me this beautiful day in which I find your airwaves. I don't say it enough, but I'm so incredibly grateful for the time we spend together. I'm creating in a bit of a shell and in isolation, but because I know that you're there and in this space we're together. So thank you so much. While thinking about writing, it really does help us so much as podcasters to hear your reactions and reviews. So maybe as you were closing this year, if this or another podcast has lit your path in some shape or form, we'd love to hear about it. Happy New Year, friends.
By Firelight is a Lit Path Studios production and is produced by Gale and Betsy Delzer. Music is by Legito Music and Pond 5. Thank you for being a part of our beautiful collection of stories.